Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 7 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. I try to watch what I post and what I capture on video, so I don't repeat myself any more than I need to. And I know I repeat myself, but that's just the way it is. But I don't want to cover the same thing too many times. I also like to watch because I want to see the obvious. It really helps to view your work and your work habits and everything you do from a different perspective, because I have other things that I like to do that are completely different than stone, so that when I work on a project for a length of time, I can work on it for 2 or 3 days or whatever, and then I can go do something completely different, so that I don't go blind to the project, so that I can still maintain the perspective, because it's really easy to get so enthralled with what you're doing that you can't see it anymore. And we always used to laugh. I come home from work when I was apprenticing, and oh man, that stone looked so good. She was gorgeous. It was coming out great, whatever. And you get back to work in the morning, back to the studio, and she'd apparently gone out drinking and got hammered, and she's ugly, man. Overnight, she just went right off a cliff. I don't know what happened, hit by a truck. Nothing happened to the stone, it was me. And I had to get away and to be able to see things. And so you've got to be able to step back from your work and see what you're doing to get the best result. So as I'm looking at these videos, and I'm talking and I'm telling and I see what I'm doing, I'm also seeing things that I'm doing or using or referencing. And so I want to make sure to include those, because if this video series, something like this, was available when I was starting out years ago, I would have been going nuts trying to figure out every little detail in the background, because that's how we learned an awful lot of this. Nobody told us anything. You had to go in and figure it out yourself. So, and because there's just no one left to teach anyone anymore, it's just going away. I want to make sure to capture what I can and help a few people that are serious enough to do the good work really be able to do it. So as I've been watching, a lot of times when I'm talking to you, I'm sitting down. So I thought, I really ought to talk about some of the fixtures we use in studio, seats and benches and stuff like that, because you don't always stand up to cut work. Sometimes it's not possible because you're working down on a low spot on a vertical piece, and you simply can't stand up without putting the piece 6 or 8 feet off the ground. And that doesn't make sense if you're working on a really heavy piece. A lot more practical to sit down or get down. And by the same token, there's sometimes when you're working on something that's tall, and there's only certain ways to reach it. And scaffolding isn't always the answer. You can do scaffolding. I've got a dirt floor, clay floor, so we can dig a hole if we have to. I can dig a hole several feet deep, because that happened up at the studio in Vermont. You get something that's too tall for the crane, dig a big hole. And then when you get done, you fill the hole back in with the dirt, and your studio keeps going. Well, let's talk about seating for just a little bit. I've tried a lot of different things. I've got things I like and what I don't, and these are what I tend to gravitate towards. I've got an old metal stool. Now, this metal stool is a little flimsy. Someday it'll probably be a little too flimsy and I'll hit the floor. But in the meantime, if I sit, it allows me to move a little bit, and I can flex and move as I'm carving and be more comfortable without having to move my stool to cut and then move my stool back. I can get a few inches of movement. So I like this stool a lot. I make sure it's got good bolts in it, and but I haven't tightened it up. It lets me move around a little bit. So it's just a plain old metal stool, but it works really well. The other stool that I use is an old milk can. And I put some foam on the top and tied it on, and the foam's kind of hard. But this is, the top being rounded like that gives me somewhat of the same ability to move around very comfortably. and it's a nice height. I like it a lot. So I keep this milk can, and you know, I could very easily build a wooden, something wood like this that was, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that was about these dimensions and try to round the top off enough. But this is pretty indestructible. You may not have a milk can handy. I bought that at I don't know, at the flea market or a thrift store or somewhere, but I've had it for a long time and I really, really like it. It makes a fantastic stool, and this is probably the last one I'll ever have to buy. When we got here, in the old buildings, was this stool. Now, this stool is, it's about, I don't know, it's about 4 feet long, 3 feet long, just under 3 foot, and it's 19 inches tall. The height's going to work for individuals differently depending on how tall or short you are. I use this stool, this bench, probably more than anything else. What I like about it is that I can slide down it very easily. I can have tools setting on my right or my left, so I can have chisels here if I'm working, and I'm working in a position where it's not easy to reach the surface where I'd have tools, or it's a wide stone where I'd have to reach. I can have tools here, have my coffee here, have my Altoids here, whatever, and be very comfortable. This stool is wonderful because you can, like I said, you can move around on it, you can straddle it depending on what you're working on and where you're at, and so it uses up more space. It has a different footprint, and sometimes that has a lot to do with why I'd use like the milk can or the metal stool versus this. But this is a really important piece. So it's just what I use, and I want to make sure that people understand this is really what I use. I didn't just find something else to use instead. Now, we've got two other things here that are not as obvious. They're very simple. I've got this box and this riser. This is just 2x4s. It's like a pallet, just with a single joist down the center. This is what I put down on the ground, either to stand on or to put my bench on to move up a couple inches, because this is infinitely faster than picking the stone up and changing the blocking and leveling the stone and getting it secure and then going back to work. This only takes me a second. It hangs on the wall over in the corner. You'll see it in a lot of the videos. This crate is the same idea. These are just 2x8s. The important thing about this crate is that it's not a cube, it's not square. This dimension is different than this dimension is different than this dimension. That gives you 1, 2, 3 different positions to either stand on it or sit on it, because it makes a great bench that you can change the height in just a second to go up or down an inch or two. And there's no set dimension on this. You can make it however you want. The only thing that's really consistent is I use 2x8s all the way around. You can make it with a 2x10, whatever. But if you're working in a situation where you may go up or down, this is wonderful. You can take the easy way to do this to be comfortable. Is to keep a garden pad that you kneel in the garden with, just a foam rubber pad. And now you got a padded cushion to sit on. You work for hours and hours and hours. You can stand on it. If you need to go up and down and move around, they're really great. Another added bonus is that it'll be heavy, But this is a crate for tools and equipment when you're going to off-site, to a show, to an event, to work, whatever. You can load your gear in there, throw it in your truck, and you're all set. And they're like a 3-2-1 block for machining where you do setups and they're different heights. These two pieces are indispensable in the studio. I use them all the time. And while we're talking about simple things that you can make, you may not have need for this. If you tend to work on pieces that are vertical, that are narrow, they're hard to stand up and stabilize. This is what we use. These are a pair of stands, normally for cutting stone, for doing granite dies around the outside. And the purpose with these is that you have two pairs of them, and they're just 2x4s with a triangular piece of plywood sandwiched in there to brace both the vertical and the horizontal, with a little bit extra material added in. The plywood just makes it easy to do them. But these are designed to hold a piece like that. And you have one from each side. Depending on how you make them, these I think are set at a foot. And so if anything is at least a foot thick, they will nest inside of each other. You can cut them down a little bit to 8 inches or whatever, so that they'll nest even more, and they're really secure. This is what we use to do a lot of work with, and it'll hold your work. This is how you'd hold a vertical piece. Now I wouldn't put like a statue in this, I don't think, if I was doing a big full round piece, but if I had something that was more rectangular in terms of cross section, that had a thickness and then a width that would be hard to stabilize vertical, I just knocked together. I've got two pairs of these, and I'm using them to hold up the plywood for the big angel background right now, and they'll just go up on the shelf. They get used when they get used. But these are some real simple fixtures. There'll probably be more stuff as we go along, but I wanted to look at what I was showing you and then make sure that I didn't leave parts out any more than I had to. But in terms of seating, you could build a crate, maybe a box, and if you didn't have room for a bench or a metal stool, but like I said, I sit down a lot. I know you're supposed to stand up all the time and everything, and I'm not in this for romance. I'm in this because this is what I do for work. And we all sit down on occasion to work on stones, and sometimes you have to sit for a long time. But these help a lot to, especially this piece on the floor here, to give you an extra inch or two all of a sudden, because you can step up 4 inches, and sometimes that's all the difference you need in order to have a comfortable working position when you're working on your stone, whether you're swinging or whether you're carving with air hammers. So that should give you a little bit more information, and we'll keep going. I'm moving stuff around now. We'll do the tool chest next. I'm trying to think of what the progression, because when I built the studio, the first thing I built was a pair of those big heavy bankers, those sawhorses. And then the next thing I built was a tool chest. And I put it on just a temporary table before I got my actual, bench built here in the studio. But in order of doing things, you gotta have something to put your work on, and you gotta have somewhere to put your tools. And so I'm gonna just go down the line from where I started here, but these two things were probably the next things I built. I don't really remember, but we used these in Vermont a lot. We had a crate that was old that had got used like this for years and years and years. We had a pallet that was built in solid. And after I built my big sawhorses, I built this and I built this, and to go along with my tool chest. And they get used all the time. So I hope that helps. Like I said, I want to tell you all stuff that nobody's going to tell you. I want to tell you the real way of doing it, not the storybook way of doing it. And I'm going to tell you what I actually do and what I actually use here in the studio. So I won't waste your time, because I really appreciate you hanging out watching these videos. I know there's other things you could be doing. So, but once again, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.